Ring she was the spinster in the shadows, until the most eligible duke in Britain asked for her hand. Hello readers, welcome to this channel. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this story. The ballroom fell silent so suddenly that Eliza Hartwell heard the crystal chandelier tremble above. One moment, 300 guests had been swirling through a waltz at Lady Pemberton's spring ball. The next, every eye turned toward the towering figure crossing the marble floor with unmistakable purpose. Adrian Blackthorne, Duke of Ashbourne, moved through the crowd like winter cutting through fog. He was 32, battle-hardened from years serving in the peninsula, and impossibly wealthy. More importantly, he was the most eligible bachelor in Britain, sought by every ambitious mother and hopeful daughter in London. Eliza pressed herself against her usual pillar near the potted palms, watching him approach the glittering circle where her younger sister Marianne held court. Poor Marianne would be overwhelmed by his attention, though she'd handle it gracefully, as she always did. But the Duke walked past Marianne without a glance. He stopped directly before Eliza. "Miss Hartwell," he said, his voice carrying in the unnatural quiet. "Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" A lady's fan clattered to the floor. Someone gasped. The orchestra's violinist struck a discordant note. Eliza's world tilted sideways as 300 pairs of eyes fixed upon the spinster in the shadows. At 27, Eliza had made peace with invisibility. While Marianne sparkled at every gathering, Eliza lingered at the edges in her altered gowns, managing their crumbling household and the small charity school she'd established in St. Giles with money scraped from pawn jewelry. Now the most powerful man in England stood before her, waiting for an answer she couldn't comprehend. "Your Grace," she managed, her voice steadier than her hands. "Surely you meant to address my sister." "I meant to address you." His gray eyes held hers with unsettling directness. "I've observed your work with the children of St. Giles. Your dedication to education reform. Your practical solutions to problems others merely lament." He paused. "I need a partner who understands what true nobility means. Someone who acts rather than performs." The compliments should have warmed her. Instead, Eliza felt the weight of every whisper starting to circulate through the ballroom. Pity, wager, strategy. No one believed the Duke would genuinely choose the plain, practical sister. Behind the Duke, she spotted her father deep in conversation with a man whose face remained hidden in shadow. Her father's expression was desperate, pleading. The debts, they must be worse than she'd feared. "I accept," Eliza heard herself say. "On one condition." The Duke's eyebrow lifted fractionally. Around them, the whispers crescendoed into barely concealed speculation. "Name it," he said. "Time to know each other properly. An involvement in your philanthropic plans." Eliza's chin lifted. "I won't be an ornament, Your Grace. If you want me, you get my work too." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval? Surprise? "Those aren't conditions, Miss Hartwell. They're requirements I was about to insist upon myself." He extended his hand. She placed hers in it, feeling calluses that surprised her. A soldier's hands, not a gentleman's. He raised her fingers to his lips, and the ballroom erupted into forced applause. As the music resumed and well-wishers swarmed them, Eliza caught sight of her father again. He was nodding rapidly at the shadowy figure, relief washing over his features. The man handed him something small, folded. Money-changing hands. Adrian noticed her distraction. His jaw tightened imperceptibly, but he said nothing, only drew her closer as Lady Pemberton descended to offer breathless congratulations. Later, after escaping to the terrace for air, Eliza found her chaperone, Mrs. Fairfax, waiting with a knowing look. "Well," the older woman said drily. "That was unexpected." "That," Eliza replied, "was terrifying. The newspapers called it a fairy tale." "Duke chooses heart over fortune," proclaimed the Morning Chronicle. "True love triumphs in Mayfair," gushed the ladies' magazine. Eliza knew better. Fairy tales didn't come with creditors lurking in shadows or fathers whose desperation hung like smoke in every room. The engagement visits began 3 days later. Adrian arrived at their modest townhouse in an unmarked carriage, as if understanding that ostentatious displays would only highlight the gap between their circumstances. He brought architectural plans instead of flowers. "I'm funding 3 model schools in the East End," he explained, spreading drawings across their worn dining table. "But I'm a soldier, not an educator. I need someone who understands what these children actually need." Eliza studied the plans with growing excitement. "The windows are too high. Children need natural light at desk level. And you've allocated too much for administrative offices, not enough for books and supplies. Precisely why I need you." His smile was slight, but genuine. "Walk me through your school tomorrow." The next morning, Eliza led him through the narrow streets of St. Giles. He wore simple clothes without his ducal crest, moving easily through crowds that would have mobbed him in full regalia. At her school, 8 children looked up from their lessons. "This is my friend Mr. Blackthorne," Eliza said simply. Adrian watched as Eliza transformed. In ballroom she was muted, careful. Here, she was radiant. She crouched beside a girl struggling with her letters, patient and encouraging. She solved a dispute over shared slates with quick diplomacy. When she noticed a boy's raw, chapped hands, she quietly removed her own gloves and gave them to him without fanfare. Adrian cataloged every detail. The way she listened to each child, as if their words mattered more than any lord's. The careful economy with which she managed her limited supplies. The fierce protectiveness in her eyes when she spoke of their futures. This was who she was when titles meant nothing. "How do you fund this?" he asked as they walked back toward Mayfair. Eliza hesitated. "Donations. Some savings from my mother's inheritance. Whatever I can spare." A lie. He'd seen her pawning a bracelet 2 weeks ago when he'd been investigating her background. But he let it pass, noting the deflection. That evening, he attended a committee meeting where Lord Rutherford, his primary opponent on education reform, made a pointed comment about bleeding hearts who meddle in matters beyond their understanding. "Careful, Rutherford," Adrian said quietly. "Some of us have actually seen what poverty does. We're not theorizing from armchairs." Rutherford's smile was cold. "I hear congratulations are in order. Marrying down, are we? How progressive." Adrian stood. The room went silent. "Say that again," he invited softly. "Please." Rutherford blanched and found urgent business elsewhere. At Hartwell House, Eliza's father grew increasingly agitated. Bills piled up. Creditors sent increasingly threatening letters. Mary Ann remained blissfully unaware, but Eliza saw everything from her position managing their household. One evening, she found her father burning papers in the study fireplace. "Father," she asked carefully. He spun, eyes wild. "Eliza, I thought you were at the musicale. I came home early." She stepped closer, noting the tremor in his hands. "Father, how bad is it?" "It's handled," he said quickly. "Too quickly. Your engagement has secured certain understandings. Everything will be fine once you're married." I settled in Eliza's stomach. "What understandings?" "Nothing you need concern yourself with." He forced a smile. "You're saving us all, my dear. The Duke of Ashbourne as a son-in-law opens doors, closes others. It's all very strategic." After he left, Eliza retrieved a half-burned letter from the fireplace. The words she could make out turned her blood cold. Final payment upon marriage ceremony and terms agreed. She showed Mrs. Fairfax that night. "You're being sold," Mrs. Fairfax said bluntly. "Your father's traded your engagement for debt forgiveness." I suspected as much. Eliza stared at the charred paper. "But I won't let it touch Adrian's work. Whatever father's done, I'll contain it. And if you can't, then I'll break the engagement myself before it ruins everything." Adrian had fought in wars. He understood strategy, deception, the value of intelligence. So he did what any good commander would do. He gathered information. His investigation revealed troubling patterns. Percival Hartwell's debts weren't random bad luck. They were calculated, strategic bleeding by a specific lender connected to Lord Rutherford's faction. The same faction opposing Adrian's reform bills. The timing of his proposal, so publicly made, had disrupted something. He'd seen it in the shadow figure's hasty conversation with Hartwell. But disrupted what exactly? He needed to see Eliza as others saw her. Not through the lens of his title, but through the eyes of those who knew her when no rank colored their judgment. The solution came from his former Batman, Sergeant Cooper, now his head groom. Want to see the real London, Your Grace? I know how. 2 nights later, Adrian, dressed in rough workman's clothes, sat smudged on his hands and face. Cooper led him through back streets to the charity school, where deliveries were made after dark to avoid thieves. New fellow. Cooper introduced him to the night porter. Strong back, weak mind, but he'll haul cargo without stealing. The porter waved them through without a second glance. Adrian spent 4 hours moving supplies, emptying slop buckets, and listening. He heard the women who cleaned talking about Miss Eliza's generosity and how she's stretching herself too thin. He heard everything, including the conversation that broke something inside him. Eliza stood in the narrow alley behind the school, facing a thin man with account books and calculating eyes. "I need more time," she said, her voice tight with exhaustion. "Time costs money, Miss Hartwell. Your father's debt compounds daily. I'm marrying a duke. Surely that's worth an extension." The moneylender smiled without warmth. "It's worth exactly what we agreed. Half your dowry paid before the ceremony, the other half within 6 months. Otherwise, I publicize your father's theft from the charity funds he was supposed to manage." Adrian, hidden in shadow 20 feet away, felt his hands clench. "That would destroy the school," Eliza whispered. "The children are not my concern. You have 3 weeks until your wedding, Miss Hartwell. I suggest you find a way to redirect some of that duke's wealth." "I'll marry him," Eliza said, her voice going flat and determined. "And I'll make it right. I won't let my family drown, whatever it costs me." The moneylender departed. Eliza remained in the alley, her shoulders bowed under invisible weight. Adrian stayed in his hiding place as she finally walked away, his mind churning. She was marrying him for money, for duty, to save her wretched father from consequences of his own making. Not for love, not for partnership, for survival. He'd thought her different, honest, real, but she was just better at hiding her mercenary calculations behind charity work and humble gowns. The betrayal tasted like ash. Adrian returned to his townhouse before dawn, still wearing his disguise. He stripped off the rough clothes and stared at his reflection in the mirror. A fool looked back at him. A fool who'd believed in possibility and partnership. Who'd thought he'd found someone genuine in a world of masks. He should confront her immediately. Demand truth. But something stopped him. The memory of her face when she'd spoken about the children. The gentleness with which she'd given away her gloves. The fierce intelligence when she'd corrected his architectural plans. Those moments had been real. He'd stake his life on it. So if they were real, what was he missing? He spent the morning reviewing everything his investigators had compiled. Hartwell family finances, the moneylender's connections, the timing of every debt and payment. A pattern emerged, subtle but unmistakable. By afternoon, he had his answer, and by evening, he knew what he had to do. He would give Eliza one chance to explain, one opportunity to trust him with the truth. If she took it, they would face this together. If she didn't, he would still protect her, but their marriage would be exactly what she'd reduced it to, a transaction. He arrived at Hartwell House at sunset, the engagement ring burning in his pocket like a live coal. Eliza met him in the shabby drawing room, and he saw immediately that she hadn't slept. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly before she clasped them together. "Your Grace, I didn't expect you." "Adrian," he corrected. "We're engaged. Use my name." Something in his tone made Eliza's stomach clench. He knew. Somehow he knew. "I need to ask you something," Adrian said, his voice carefully controlled. "And I need you to be honest. Completely honest, regardless of consequences." Eliza's mind raced. If she told him everything, he would either pity her or despise her. If she stayed silent, she would build their marriage on lies. Neither option seemed survivable. "Did you trust me?" he asked. "Enough to tell me about your father's debts? About the threats? About any of it?" Her breath caught. How did you answer the question? Eliza stood and walked to her writing desk. She withdrew an envelope, already sealed and addressed. She'd written it last night, after hours of agonizing deliberation. I wrote this for you, she said quietly, holding it out. I was going to give it to you at our next meeting. Adrian took the letter, but didn't open it. What does it say? That you're free. Her voice was steady now, decision made. If you want to end our engagement, I release you from any obligation. I'll take whatever social consequences come. My reputation doesn't matter, but yours does. Your work does. I won't let it be tainted by scandal. Why would I want freedom? Because I haven't been honest. The words tore out of her. I knew about my father's debts. I knew creditors would circle unless I married well. I accepted your proposal partly because it would solve problems I should have solved myself. Adrian studied her face. Exhaustion, shame, but also defiance. She was confessing not because she'd been caught, but because she couldn't bear the dishonesty. Open the letter, he said. Eliza broke the seal with shaking hands and read aloud. Her own words sounded stark in the quiet room. Your Grace, I accepted your proposal under false pretenses. My father's debts are worse than I led you to believe. Creditors have threatened to expose embezzlement charges unless I redirect funds after our marriage. I will not allow your philanthropic work to become leverage for criminals. Please accept my withdrawal from our engagement. I will ensure society believes the fault is mine. Your reputation will remain intact. Iaka. She set down the letter. There. You know everything. Not everything. Adrian moved closer. You said you intended to tell me after securing a promise that creditors wouldn't target my projects. How were you planning to secure that promise? Eliza hesitated. I have proof. Documents showing the embezzlement charges are fabricated, part of a larger scheme. But exposing it requires your influence. I was gathering evidence to give you after the wedding, when you'd be legally protected from any fallout. Scheme. Adrian's voice sharpened. Explain. The moneylender works for someone in Parliament. Someone who wants to discredit reform efforts by attacking their patrons. My father was targeted specifically because of his daughter's connections to society. If I'd come to you before marriage, they could claim you were corruptly using your power to protect your mistress's family. Adrian felt the final pieces click into place. Rutherford, he said. Eliza's eyes widened. How did you? I've been investigating too. He pulled papers from his coat. Lord Rutherford has been systematically targeting anyone connected to education reform, creating financial leverage, then pressuring them to withdraw support or face scandal. He's been doing this to others? Eliza took the papers, scanning them rapidly. My God, 5 families, 7 charitable foundations, all with sudden financial crises traced back to the same network of lenders. Your father was a pawn. You were the target. Adrian's jaw set. Because of your connection to me, however tangential it was at the time. Rutherford saw opportunity when I started attending events where you were present. He moved against your family to either prevent our association or gain leverage over my vote. So my father's gambling problems were real but exploited. They offered him money he desperately needed at rates designed to trap him. Then they waited to see if I'd notice you. His expression softened fractionally. I did notice, but not for the reasons they anticipated. A knock at the door interrupted them. The maid entered, white-faced. Miss, I'm so sorry, but there's a man here. He says the school must close tonight or there'll be accidents. His words, miss. He was very clear. Eliza's face went pale. Adrian felt rage crystallize into cold purpose. Show me this man, he said quietly. Too quietly. The man was actually a boy of perhaps 15, clearly paid to deliver the threat, and too young to understand the forces he was serving. Who sent you? Adrian asked, his commander's voice making the boy flinch. To know his name, sir. Fancy hint. Gave me 2 shillings to deliver the message to Miss Hartwell. Describe him. The boy's description matched one of Rutherford's known associates. Adrian handed the boy 5 shillings. You never delivered this message. Understand. The boy fled. Adrian turned to Eliza, who stood frozen in the hallway. This ends tonight, he said. We're not waiting for the wedding. We're not gathering more evidence. We're finishing this now. Ow! Eliza's voice was barely audible. There's a gathering tonight at Lord Pemberton's. Everyone who matters will be there, including Rutherford. Adrian's smile was sharp and cold. They expect me to quietly break our engagement to avoid scandal. Instead, we're going to bury them. Adrian, they'll destroy you. They'll try. He took her hands. But I didn't spend 5 years fighting Napoleon to lose to parasites in Parliament. And I didn't find you to let anyone take you from me. Find me, Eliza repeated, her heart stumbling over the words. I'll explain everything later. Right now, gather every document you have. Every piece of evidence. Every name, every connection. Bring it to my townhouse within the hour. He turned to leave, then paused. And Eliza? Wear your best gown tonight. Not an altered one. Your very best. You're about to be seen by everyone, and I want them to see the woman I see. Within the hour, Eliza arrived at Adrian's townhouse with a box of carefully organized documents. She found him in his study with Sergeant Cooper, 2 lawyers, and a magistrate she recognized as Lord Pembroke's son. This is everything? Adrian asked, scanning her evidence. Everything I could compile. But Adrian, it's not enough for formal charges. Most of it is circumstantial. We don't need formal charges. He handed the documents to one lawyer. We need enough to make Rutherford's allies abandon him. Social death, not legal prosecution. Your Grace, one lawyer said carefully, this could backfire. If Lord Rutherford accuses you of fabricating evidence to protect your betrothed's father. He won't. Adrian's voice was certain. Because we're not protecting Hartwell. We're exposing the entire scheme, including Hartwell's role in it. Eliza's breath caught. Adrian, that will destroy my father. Your father destroyed himself. His gray eyes met hers. You can't protect him anymore, Eliza. He made his choices. Now you get to make yours. What choice? Whether you're going to let his mistakes define your future. Whether you trust me to do this right. Whether you're willing to stand beside me tonight in front of everyone and claim your place. It should have been impossible. They barely knew each other. This engagement had been built on misunderstandings and strategic necessity. There was no rational reason to trust him with everything she had left. But Eliza looked at the determination in his face, the competence with which he'd organized this counterattack, the way he'd said, I won't let anyone take you from me, as if it was simple fact rather than romantic declaration. Yes, she said, I trust you. I'll stand with you. Whatever comes. At Lord Pemberton's gathering, whispers preceded them like storm clouds. The engagement was doomed. The spinster had trapped the Duke. He would announce their separation tonight to save his reputation. Instead, Adrian and Eliza entered together, her hand secure on his arm, her head high despite the stares. She wore her mother's pearls and a gown of deep emerald that transformed her from invisible to undeniable. Adrian had insisted, sending his sister's modiste to ensure the fit was perfect. You look like a duchess, he'd told her before they departed. I look terrified, she'd replied. Then you look like an honest duchess. That's better. Now, as they moved through the crowd, Adrian felt Eliza's hand tremble slightly on his arm. He covered it with his own, steady and sure. Trust me, he murmured. Lord Rutherford stood near the fireplace, satisfaction evident in his posture. He believed he'd won, that the Duke would sacrifice love for reputation, reform for respectability. Adrian approached with Eliza at his side. The room gradually fell silent. Lord Rutherford, Adrian said pleasantly, I'm so glad you're here. There's something I'd like to share with everyone. Rutherford's smile faltered slightly. Your Grace, my betrothed and I have uncovered something troubling. A systematic scheme to discredit education reform by targeting its supporters financially, creating debt traps, then using those debts as leverage to force political compliance. The room went still. Every eye turned to Adrian. That's quite an accusation, Rutherford said, his voice careful. It's quite well documented. Adrian gestured, and Sergeant Cooper stepped forward carrying a dispatch case. Within this case, Adrian continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, are ledgers showing financial transactions between Lord Rutherford's known associates and moneylenders who have systematically targeted families connected to reform efforts. Circumstantial, Rutherford snapped. You have no proof of my involvement. True. Adrian smiled coldly. Which is why I also have sworn statement from 3 of your associates who have decided they'd rather face social censure than potential criminal conspiracy charges. Rutherford's face went white. Around them, guests shifted uncomfortably. Scandal was one thing. Criminal conspiracy was quite another. You're bluffing, Rutherford said, but his voice wavered. Am I? Adrian opened the case and began removing documents. Here's a letter from your secretary to a Mr. Grimsby, instructing him to apply pressure to the Hartwell matter. Here's a ledger showing payments from your account to the same Mr. Grimsby on dates corresponding to threats delivered to Miss Hartwell's school. He spread more papers across a nearby table. And here's the truly damning piece. A draft letter in your own hand instructing Grimsby to ensure the Duke's reformist nonsense dies with his reputation. Gasps echoed through the room. Rutherford lunged for the papers, but Adrian caught his wrist with a soldier's reflexes. I wouldn't, Adrian said softly. Lord Pembroke's son is here in his capacity as magistrate. The original documents are already in his custody. Rutherford wrenched free, his composure shattered. This is a fabrication. You're manufacturing evidence to protect your fortune hunting. Careful. Adrian's voice dropped to something dangerous. That's my betrothed you're slandering. She's using you. Rutherford's desperation made him reckless. Her father embezzled from charities. She accepted your proposal to cover his debts. She's no better than you. Eliza's voice cut through his tirade like a blade. Every head swiveled toward her. She stepped forward, and Adrian saw her fear transform into something harder, brighter. You're absolutely right, Lord Rutherford. My father made terrible mistakes. He embezzled from charity funds meant for children's education. Her voice didn't waver. I discovered his theft 8 months ago. I've been repaying those funds ever since for my own inheritance, because the alternative was letting those children suffer for an adult's failings. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not the meek confession Rutherford had expected. I accepted the Duke's proposal partly because I was desperate, Eliza continued. But not for the reasons you believe. I was desperate to protect children from being used as pawns in a political game. I was desperate to stop men like you from destroying education reform by destroying its supporters. She turned, addressing the entire room now. His Grace is trying to give London's poorest children a chance at better futures. I've spent 3 years teaching those children myself. I've seen what opportunity can do when it's offered without judgment or condition. And I'll be damned if I let cynical men in comfortable clubs destroy that because they're afraid of change. The room was absolutely silent. Lady Pemberton, their hostess, broke the silence. Miss Hartwell, are you saying you have personal knowledge of these children? I run a charity school in St. Giles, ma'am. Have done for 3 years. 8 students currently, though I hope to expand. In St. Giles? Another matron looked scandalized. Alone, with my chaperone, Mrs. Fairfax. Eliza's chin lifted. The children, they're no less deserving of education than those in Mayfair. They simply lack the fortune of birth. How progressive, someone muttered. But the tone was more thoughtful than mocking. Lord Pembroke's son, the magistrate, stepped forward. Lord Rutherford, I'm afraid these documents constitute sufficient evidence for a formal inquiry. I'll need you to come with me. This is absurd, Rutherford blustered. You're taking the word of a fortune hunter and a disgraced Duke who's what? Adrian's voice was silk over steel. Married beneath himself? Chosen character over pedigree? Decided that intelligence and integrity matter more than ball gowns and empty flattery. He took Eliza's hand, raising it for everyone to see. Yes, I chose Miss Hartwell. I chose her because she sacrifices for others instead of exploiting them. Because she acts on her principles instead of merely discussing them over port. Because when I needed a partner, not a decoration, she was the only woman in England qualified. He turned to Eliza, his voice softening. And because I'm falling in love with her. The declaration rang in the sudden quiet. Eliza's eyes widened, her breath catching audibly. Adrian hadn't planned to confess his feelings publicly. But seeing Eliza stand there, terrified and brave and magnificent, the words had simply spilled out. Around them, reaction rippled through the crowd. Some scandalized, some moved, some calculating how this realigned social dynamics. Marian pushed through the crowd, her beautiful face fierce. "My sister is worth 10 of any woman here," she announced. "If you can't see that, the fault is yours, not hers." Mrs. Fairfax appeared at Eliza's other side. "The girl's been managing a household and a school on scraps for years while you lot fretted over which French lace was fashionable. She's got more spine than this entire ballroom combined." Lord Pembroke himself stepped forward. "Adrian, if what you've presented is accurate, you've uncovered a significant conspiracy. The reformist cause owes you considerable gratitude." "It owes Miss Hartwell," Adrian corrected. "She compiled most of the evidence while trying to protect everyone involved." Lady Pemberton studied Eliza with new eyes. "Miss Hartwell, I wonder if you might call on me next week. I chair the Ladies' Education Society. We could use someone with your practical experience." Yes, ma'am. I'd be honored." Other ladies began murmuring, reevaluating. The tide was turning. Rutherford made a desperate lunge for the documents, but Sergeant Cooper blocked him with casual efficiency. The magistrate took Rutherford's arm firmly. "Come along, my lord. We've much to discuss." As they departed, Eliza swayed slightly. Adrian immediately guided her toward a settee in a quiet alcove, away from the buzzing crowd. "Breathe," he instructed gently. "I think I just ended my father's social standing," Eliza whispered. "You freed yourself from his mistakes." They sat in the alcove while the party continued beyond the velvet curtain. Gradually, Eliza's breathing steadied. "You said you're falling in love with me," she said finally. "Did you mean it? Or was it strategy?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Then, 4 nights ago, I disguised myself as a workman. Went to your school to see who you were when I wasn't there." Eliza's head snapped up. "You what?" "I needed to know if you were real. If what we were building was genuine or performance." He met her eyes. "I heard you talking to the moneylender. Heard you say you'd marry me and make it right. That you wouldn't let your family drown." She went pale. "Adrian, I thought you were using me." "That was all calculation." His voice was raw. It hurt more than I expected, which told me I was already invested in ways I hadn't admitted. "But I was using you," Eliza said miserably. "Not for wealth, but you're right. I accepted partly out of necessity, not just admiration." "I know. I spent 2 days angry about it." Adrian smiled slightly. "Then I spent 2 more investigating. And I realized you were trying to protect me. Not exploit me. Protect. I didn't want your work tainted by my father's corruption." "I know. And while you were trying to protect me, I was watching you give away your gloves to a child with chapped hands. Watching you stretch resources impossibly far. Watching you be brilliant and kind and relentless." His hand covered hers. "I fell in love watching you be yourself. The woman you are when no one's performing, no titles involved. Just Eliza, fierce and funny and determined." Tears spilled down Eliza's cheeks. "I would have married you out of duty," she admitted, "and fallen in love by breakfast." Adrian laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "That's specific. You would have been kind at breakfast. Passed the jam without being asked. Probably read something interesting and told me about it." She wiped her eyes. "I'm quite sure that's when the falling would have been complete." "I fell in love when you gave away your gloves," Adrian confessed. "Specifically, the moment you pretended you'd brought extras so the boy wouldn't feel obligated. That's when I knew I was lost." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. Beyond the curtain, the party's noise had changed tenor. No longer scandalized whispers, but energized conversation. Change was in the air. "What happens now?" Eliza asked. "Now we finish what we started. I have a charter ready for the model schools. Your name will be listed first as educational director. We'll work together, partners in every sense. My father will face consequences. Yes, but you'll be protected, and the children will be protected. That's what matters." Eliza took a shaky breath. "I'm terrified." "Good." Adrian's eyes were warm. "So am I. It means we're doing something that matters." He reached into his pocket and withdrew the engagement ring, a simple band with a single perfect sapphire. I brought this tonight, thinking I might have to return it. Instead, he slipped it on her finger. Will you marry me, Eliza Hartwell? Not for strategy or protection or necessity, but because we choose each other with eyes open. Yes, she whispered. Yes to partnership and jam at breakfast and terrifying meaningful work. Yes to all of it. He kissed her then, gentle and sure. In the alcove while a ballroom away, society rearranged itself around the truth they'd forced into light. The wedding took place 6 weeks later on a perfect June morning. Not in a grand cathedral, but in the small church that served street Giles, with the school children forming an honor guard with handmade flower garlands. Mary Ann served as Eliza's attendant, radiant and proud. Mrs. Fairfax wept openly. Even Percival Hartwell attended, though he stood at the back, diminished and quiet. He'd faced no criminal charges. Adrian had seen to that, but his reputation was ruined. He would retire to the country, his political ambitions finished. Eliza should have felt guilty. Instead, she felt free. As she walked down the aisle in a simple white gown, she saw Adrian waiting at the altar. He wore his dress uniform, looking every inch the decorated soldier and powerful duke. But his eyes held only warmth as he watched her approach. You're beautiful, he murmured when she reached him. You're biased, she replied, smiling. Wonderfully so. The ceremony was brief, but meaningful. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Adrian kissed her thoroughly enough to make the children giggle and Mrs. Fairfax fan herself. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Not society's elite, but the people of St. Giles, families whose children attended Eliza's school, shopkeepers who'd watched her walk these streets for 3 years, women she'd helped in quiet ways no ballroom ever saw. They cheered as the Duke and Duchess of Ashbourne emerged into sunlight. Adrian had arranged a wedding breakfast at his townhouse. But first they took a slow carriage ride through the streets where Eliza had worked and sacrificed and built something real. No regrets, Adrian asked, watching her face as they passed familiar corners. Only that I didn't trust you sooner, Eliza admitted. I wasted weeks in fear when I could have been honest. We both wasted time protecting ourselves. His arm came around her shoulders. But we're here now. That's what matters. At the townhouse, they found an unexpected guest. Lord Pembroke himself had come to deliver news personally. The inquiry concluded this morning, he announced. Lord Rutherford has resigned his seat. 3 of his associates face charges. The Education Reform Bill passed the Lords this afternoon with unanimous support. Adrian's hand tightened on Eliza's. Unanimous? Turns out exposing corruption makes reformist causes suddenly popular. Pembroke smiled. Parliament wants to be on the right side of this particular scandal. Your model schools will have full government backing. Funding, legal protection, the works. After he departed, Eliza turned to Adrian with wonder in her eyes. We did it. We actually did it. You did it. I just provided the platform. We, she insisted firmly. Partners, remember? The wedding breakfast was a mix of worlds. Lords and ladies seated beside school teachers and shopkeepers, all celebrating a union that had started as strategy and become something real. Lady Pemberton cornered Eliza near the dessert table. My dear, the Ladies' Education Society wants to model our next initiative on your school. We'll need your guidance establishing curriculum standards. I'd be honored, ma'am. And please call me Catherine. We're colleagues now. As the afternoon wore on, Eliza found herself surrounded by women who'd never noticed her before, all suddenly interested in education reform and charitable work. Some were genuine. Some were opportunistic. She was learning to tell the difference. Mary Ann appeared at her elbow. How does it feel being the most talked about woman in London? Terrifying and wonderful. Eliza hugged her sister. Thank you for standing with me that night. You stood alone for years while I danced. It was past time I returned the favor. As sunset approached, Adrian found Eliza on the terrace, watching the city spread below them. Tired? He asked. Overwhelmed. Happy. Frightened about tomorrow. Tomorrow we start the real work. The real work began immediately. Within a week, Eliza was reviewing architectural plans, interviewing potential teachers, and navigating committee meetings with noble women who'd never set foot in neighborhoods like Street Giles. Adrian had been right about partnership. They balanced each other perfectly, his political influence opening doors, her practical experience ensuring those doors led somewhere meaningful. 3 months after the wedding, they opened the first model school. It was larger than Eliza's original schoolroom, with proper windows at desk level, just as she'd insisted. Ample supplies, and teachers who were paid living wages. 60 children attended the first day. By the end of the month, they had a waiting list. "We need 5 more schools immediately," Eliza told Adrian over breakfast one morning. "The demand is overwhelming. Then we'll build 5 more." He passed her the jam without being asked, and she smiled at the simple gesture. "I love you," she said suddenly. He looked up, surprise and pleasure warming his face. "I love you too. What brought that on?" "Jam," she said, "and the way you understand my work without needing constant explanation. And how you listen to 8-year-olds like they're members of parliament." And he kissed her, cutting off the list. "I understand. Jam is very romantic." Their work expanded. By the end of their first year of marriage, 7 model schools operated across London. Eliza's name appeared regularly in newspapers, no longer as the spinster who caught a duke, but as education reformer and child advocate. She gave speeches, wrote articles, testified before parliamentary committees, became the person society had overlooked for 27 years, not through marriage but through competence. Adrian's pride was evident to everyone. He attended her speeches, applauded her articles, and deferred to her expertise in matters of education with genuine respect. 1 year after that first shocking proposal, they returned to Lady Pemberton's ballroom for the spring ball. Eliza wore sapphires now, a gift from Adrian, and entered not as a wallflower but as a duchess with purpose. The whispers followed them, but they'd changed. Admiration, respect, curiosity about the schools that were transforming lives. "Remember when you proposed here?" Eliza asked as they danced. "I remember terrifying you." "You remember correctly." She smiled up at him. "I thought you were mad, or making a wager, or playing some game I didn't understand." "I was," Adrian admitted. "Playing a game called, how do I convince this brilliant woman I've been watching for months to take me seriously?" "Months?" Eliza stumbled slightly. "You'd noticed me before that night?" "I noticed you for almost a year. Every time you appeared at these gatherings, quietly managing your family, disappearing early to work at your school. I noticed everything. Why didn't you approach sooner?" "Because I was a coward." He pulled her closer. "Afraid of rejection. Afraid you'd see through me to all the ways I'm broken. Afraid I'd ruin something beautiful by wanting it too much." "You're not broken," Eliza said fiercely. "You're the best man I've ever known. I'm the man you made me want to be." As the music swelled, Eliza thought about the girl she'd been 1 year ago. Overlooked, exhausted, convinced her life's purpose was sacrifice and shadows. She thought about the leap of faith she'd taken accepting his proposal, the terror of standing before society and claiming her truth, the work they'd built together. "I'm glad you asked," she said softly. That night, in front of everyone. "I'm glad you were brave when I couldn't be. You were always brave. I just helped everyone else see it." The song ended. Society continued its endless dance around them. But for Eliza and Adrian, the music had just begun, a partnership that had started with a shocking proposal and become something neither had dared imagine. A marriage built on honesty, sustained by purpose, and deepened by love that grew from mutual respect into something irreplaceable. The spinster in the shadows had stepped into light. The eligible duke had found his perfect duchess. And together, they were changing London, one school, one child, one authentic moment at a time. As they left the ballroom that night, hand in hand, Eliza looked back once at the pillar where she'd stood invisible for so many years. She didn't miss the shadows at all. The end. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Your support helps us continue creating more stories of love, redemption, and second chances that matter. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another of our romantic stories. Click and discover more beautiful tales of courage and connection. With all our gratitude, Duke's Story.